Welcome to the deep dive. We're diving into the Year 6 SATs today.
Yes, indeed we are.
And you're here because you want to understand these exams, right? You want to know what they're all about.
I imagine so.
So we've got this awesome collection of materials here, official guidelines, parent resources, practice tests.
He has quite the pile.
It is. And our goal, well, we're going to pull out the absolutely essential information you need.
We're going to cut through the noise.
Precisely.
Yeah.
No need to get bogged down. We're going to streamline this.
Fast track to understanding the SATs. That's what we're aiming for.
Absolutely. So think of this as your express lane to SATs knowledge.
Love that analogy.
All right, let's jump right in. First things first, what are the Year 6 SATs? Like, really, what are we talking about here?
Okay, so in the simplest terms, the Year 6 SATs are the standard assessment tests.
SATs, got it.
Right, SATs. And they're taken by students in Key Stage 2.
That's years 3 to 6 for anyone who's not familiar.
Exactly. Years 3, 4, 5, and 6 in England.
Yeah, most kids take these when they're, what, 10 or 11?
Usually in May, yeah, around that age.
Okay, so right around that transition to secondary school.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Now, one thing I found interesting, most government schools have to give these tests.
Right, it's a requirement for them.
But independent schools, they have a choice.
Yeah, they can decide whether they want to participate or not.
Interesting. So, big question, why? Why do we have these tests in the first place? What's the purpose?
So there are a few key reasons, and they're all pretty important.
Lay it on us.
All right, first off, it gives teachers and parents a really good snapshot of what kids have learned throughout Key Stage 2.
A way to check in on progress.
Exactly. See what's stuck, what might need a little more attention.
So it helps identify areas where a child might need extra support.
Especially as they're getting ready for secondary school, that transition can be huge.
Huge is right. New environment, new expectations.
Exactly. So knowing where they stand is helpful.
Absolutely. What else? What are the other reasons behind these tests?
Okay, so second big reason. The government uses the results, the overall results from all the schools.
Right, to get a big picture.
Yeah, they get a sense of the teaching standards across the whole country.
So it's a way to sort of measure how well schools are doing.
In a way, yeah, but it's not the only measure, of course.
Right, just one piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. It's not the be-all and end-all, more like a checkpoint.
A checkpoint on the learning journey.
Perfect way to put it. It's a moment in time, not a definition of a child's ability.
Right, it's not like, oh, this score means you're this or that.
No, not at all. It's about understanding where they are at that moment.
And using that information to support their learning moving forward.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of moving forward, secondary schools also take a peek at these scores, don't they?
They do. I was going to ask about that.
Right. So when kids are going into year 7,
Yeah, the big move up.
secondary schools will often use these SAT scores along with other info like CAT exams.
Right, the CAT exams are a whole other thing.
And a whole other ball game.
But they use this information to figure out initial class placement.
Especially in English and maths, those core subjects.
So doing well on the SATs, it can actually benefit kids as they transition to secondary school.
It can definitely give them a bit of a boost, a good starting point.
It's not just for placement, right? It also shows how much progress kids have made over their whole primary school experience.
Oh, absolutely. That's a really important point.
It's like from the end of year 2 all the way to year 6.
It's like a progress report showing their growth in English and maths.
It really helps to see that development over time.
It paints a picture of their learning journey, all those primary years.
All right, so we've talked about why SATs are important.
The why, the who, the when.
Now let's get into the what. What subjects are actually formally tested?
All right, so the big ones, the ones with those formal sit-down tests, are English and maths.
The core subjects make sense.
It does. But it's worth noting that teachers, they do their own assessments too.
Right, not just these big exams.
No, they're constantly observing and evaluating.
So they're looking at things like writing, speaking, listening.
And usually science as well, seeing how kids are applying what they've learned.
It's a holistic view, not just focused on test performance.
Exactly. And these teacher assessments, they're based on what they see in the classroom throughout the year.
So it's ongoing, not just a one-time thing.
Right. It's a continuous process.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, let's break down these English tests.
Let's do it.
We've got the reading test, right?
Yes. The first formal English test is all about reading.
And what does that look like? What can kids expect walking into that test?
Okay, so imagine a booklet, right? And inside, there are 3 different pieces of writing.
3 different types.
Yeah. Usually there's a story, so something fictional.
Makes sense.
Then there's an informational piece, something non-fiction. To round it off, a poem.
A poem. That's cool. Keeps things interesting.
It does. It does. And what's interesting is these texts usually get progressively harder as you go through the booklet.
Oh, so it starts a bit easier and then ramps up the challenge.
Exactly. And alongside this booklet, you have a separate answer booklet.
Okay, so 2 booklets to juggle.
But don't worry, the instructions are clear.
And how much time do they get for all this reading and answering?
They get a full hour, 60 minutes to tackle it all.
That seems fair. Gives them time to think.
And the whole test is worth 50 marks, so each question carries weight.
50 marks. So this reading test, it's not just about, like, finding the answer in the text, right?
Oh, absolutely not. It's about digging deeper, understanding what's going on beneath the surface.
It's about comprehension, not just recall.
Precisely. So they're going to face questions that test different aspects of their reading skills.
Okay, give us some examples. What kind of questions are we talking about here?
All right, so you'll see questions that are straight up fact retrieval.
Like find the answer in the text.
Yeah, like find and copy one word that shows the weather was cold.
Straightforward enough.
Then you've got vocabulary and context questions.
Those are the ones where it's like, what does this word mean in this specific sentence?
Exactly. So it's not just about knowing the dictionary definition.
You got to understand how it's used in that particular context.
Exactly. So, for example, they might ask, what does the word eerie mean in this sentence?
Ah, tricky. Eerie can have a few different shades of meaning.
Exactly. And then you've got ranking or ordering questions.
Okay, so putting things in chronological order.
Yeah, like events from a story, putting them in the order they happened.
All right, what else? What else?
One of the big ones is inference questions.
Ah, those are the ones that make you think.
They do. It's about reading between the lines, figuring out what's not explicitly stated.
Like, how is the character feeling? Why do you think this?
Exactly. It's about drawing conclusions based on the evidence in the text.
It's like detective work almost.
It is. And then you've got find and copy questions.
So finding specific phrases or sentences.
Yeah, like find and copy a word that suggests the animal was scared.
So it's not just comprehension. It's also about being able to locate specific information.
And then we have questions about the author's word choice.
Ah, why did the author use this particular word?
Exactly. They have to think about the effect of the author's language.
So, like, why did the author use the word zoomed in this sentence?
Exactly. And to top it all off, there are summarizing questions.
So taking a whole paragraph and boiling it down to its main points.
Precisely. It's about identifying the key ideas.
So it's a really comprehensive test of reading skills.
It really pushes them to engage with the text on multiple levels.
And don't forget, there are also multiple choice questions sprinkled throughout.
Oh yeah, those are always a classic.
All right, so once they've tackled all these questions, how does the reading test actually get marked?
Okay, so this is interesting. The reading test is marked by someone external.
Not their teacher.
Nope, not someone from their school.
So it's unbiased, totally fair.
As fair as it can be. And the number of correct answers, that raw score, is then converted into a scaled score.
Ah, so it's not just about how many you got right. It's about how you compare to other kids.
And that scaled score, it ranges from 80 to 120.
And what's the magic number to hit, the expected standard?
100. If they get a scaled score of 100 or more, they've met the expected standard for reading.
So 100 is the benchmark.
Pretty much. And this score, it becomes part of their overall SAT's results.
Okay, clear as crystal. Now let's move on to the other big English test. Grammar, punctuation, and spelling.
The trifecta.
It sounds intimidating, I'll be honest.
It can seem that way, but really it's about the fundamentals of writing.
The building blocks of good communication.
Exactly. And this test comes in 2 parts. Grammar and punctuation together, and then spelling on its own.
So 2 separate papers.
Yep, 2 chances to shine. And to do well, understanding some key grammatical terms is super helpful.
All right, let's dive into that. What are some of the grammar words that kids should be familiar with?
Okay, so first up, we've got nouns.
The naming words.
Right. Nouns are the words for things, people, places, ideas.
So like teacher, London, book, happiness, those sorts of things.
Exactly. Then we've got verbs. Those are the action words.
Run, think, play.
You got it. But verbs can also describe a state of being, like is and are.
Right. Not all verbs are about movement.
Exactly. Then we have adjectives, the words that describe nouns.
Blue, happy, interesting.
Perfect examples. And then we can't forget about adverbs.
The words that tell us how, when, where, or why something happens.
You're on a roll. And a lot of adverbs end in fisply, like quickly, very, always.
Like running quickly, quickly tells us how they're running.
Exactly. It's all about adding detail to the verbs.
Okay, so I've got nouns, verbs, adjectives, and
The
adverbs.
Fab Four of grammar.
What else is lurking in the world of
All
grammar?
right, next up we've got pronouns. Those are the words we use instead of nouns.
So like he, she, it, they, we.
Yep. They help us avoid repetition and keep things flowing smoothly.
And then there are prepositions. Those are the tricky ones for me.
They can be. Prepositions show the relationship between a noun and other words.
Like time before, after, or place, under, over.
Exactly. They tell us where or when something is happening.
Then there are conjunctions, the joining words.
Right, like and, but, or, because
That connect different parts of a sentence.
they're the glue that holds everything together.
And last but not least, we have determiners.
These little words come before nouns and give us more specific information.
So like the a, and, this, that, my.
Yep, they help us pinpoint which noun we're talking about.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We're building quite the grammar vocabulary.
And this is just the beginning. Now let's talk about how sentences are structured.
Because knowing the parts of speech is one thing, but putting them together is a whole other challenge.
That's right. So understanding clauses is key.
Clauses, okay.
Yeah, a main clause is like the VIP. It can stand alone as a complete sentence.
Like, the dog barked.
Perfect example. A subordinate clause is more like a sidekick. It adds extra information but can't stand alone.
So like, because it was scared.
Exactly. And together, those two clauses make a complex sentence.
So it's all about how these clauses work together.
Then we have phrases, which are groups of words that work together but don't have a subject, and a verb like a clause does.
So like, running quickly or the big red ball.
You got it. Phrases add flavor and detail to our sentences.
Okay, clauses and phrases, checked. What else do we need to know about sentence structure?
We need to talk about voice, active versus passive.
Active voice is when the subject is doing the action, right?
Exactly. Like the cat chased the mouse.
And passive voice is when the action is done to the subject.
Right. So it'd be the mouse was chased by the cat.
So it's all about who's doing the chasing or who's being chased in this case.
Exactly. And finally, we have tenses, the different forms of verbs that show when something happened.
Like past, present, future.
You got it. So like
Okay.
walked is past, walk is present, and will walk is future.
So knowing these tenses helps us understand the timeline of a story.
Exactly. It's all about understanding when things happened.
All right, that's a lot of grammar. Starting to feel like a grammar whiz over here.
But you're getting there. But we're not done yet. We still have punctuation to conquer.
Oh yeah, punctuation. It can feel like a whole other language sometimes.
It can, but using punctuation marks correctly is so important for clear writing.
Makes all the difference in how we read and understand things.
Absolutely. So let's break it down, starting with commas.
The little pauses that can cause big confusion.
They can, but commas have a few main jobs. They separate items in a list.
Like apples, oranges, and bananas.
Perfect example. And they come after introductory phrases.
So like, after school, I went to the park.
Exactly. And they can also add extra information within a sentence.
Okay, so commas have multiple personalities.
They do, but once you understand their roles, it's not so bad.
All right, what's next in the punctuation parade?
We can't forget about apostrophes.
The little guys that show possession.
Right, like the dog's bone shows that the bone belongs to the dog.
And they're also used in contractions like can't, which is short for cannot.
Exactly. Two important jobs for the apostrophe.
Then we have question marks, easy peasy. They go at the end of questions.
And exclamation marks, they show strong emotion or excitement.
Like, I won the lottery.
Exactly. Full stops, they mark the end of most sentences.
The period, the full stop, same thing.
And then we have colons. They can introduce a list or an explanation.
So like, here are the ingredients: flour, sugar, and eggs.
Perfect. Semicolons, they join two related sentences that could stand alone.
So they're like a stronger comma, almost.
In a way, yeah, they show a closer connection between those sentences.
And then we have dashes. They can add extra information or create a pause.
Think of them like parentheses, but a little more casual.
And finally, we have hyphens, those little guys that join words together.
Right, like compound words, well known. Or when you add a prefix like redo.
Okay, so punctuation, it's all about clarity and structure.
It's like the traffic signals of writing, guiding the reader along.
Makes sense. Now, what about spelling? Are there any magic tricks or rules to help kids remember how to spell tricky words?
There are definitely some helpful spelling rules to keep in mind.
Okay, hit us with them.
All right, the classic one, the one everyone remembers from school. I before E, except after C.
like believe and receive.
You got it. But of course, there are always exceptions, like weird.
Weird indeed. English, always keeping us on our toes.
It does. Another important rule is knowing how to add suffixes.
Suffixes, those are the word endings, right?
Exactly. So like when you add ing to run, you double the last consonant, running.
And when you add ing to bake, you drop the silent E. Baking.
You're a spelling whiz now. And then understanding prefixes and suffixes can be super helpful.
Prefixes are those word beginnings, like un, which means not.
Right, and suffixes are the endings, like umful, which means full of.
So knowing these can help you figure out the spelling of a whole bunch of words.
Absolutely. And then plurals. Gotta know your plurals.
Adding S or ES to most words.
Right, but then there are those tricky irregular plurals, like children instead of childs.
Ah, yes. English loves to keep things interesting.
And finally, we have homophones, those words that sound the same but are spelled differently and have different meanings.
Like there, and there.
Those are the classic ones, and two, and two.
It's so easy to mix those up.
I still have to double check sometimes.
Me too. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground with English, grammar, punctuation, spelling, the whole works.
We've tackled it all. Now let's switch gears and talk about maths.
Bring on the numbers.
All right, so in maths, there are two main types of tests, arithmetic and reasoning.
So two different ways of thinking about maths.
Exactly. The arithmetic test, that's the first maths paper. It's all about speed and accuracy in calculations.
So it's like how quickly could you add, subtract, multiply, and divide?
You got it. And it also includes questions on fractions, decimals, and percentages.
The essential math skills.
And they have 30 minutes for this arithmetic test, and it's worth 40 marks.
30 minutes, 40 marks. That's a decent chunk of time.
Most questions are worth 1 mark, but some of the trickier ones, like long division or long multiplication, they're worth 2 marks.
So got to be careful with those.
And they write their answers directly in the boxes on the test paper.
No multiple choice for arithmetic.
Nope, straight up calculations. Show your work.
All right, so that's the arithmetic test, all about those fundamental calculations.
Now, the reasoning papers, they test a different kind of maths ability.
More problem solving, I imagine.
Exactly. There are 2 reasoning papers, each lasting 40 minutes.
So a little longer than arithmetic.
And each one is worth 35 marks, so quite a few marks up for grabs.
And these reasoning papers, they cover a wide range of topics, don't they?
They do. They test how well kids can apply their maths knowledge to solve problems.
So it's not just about knowing the formulas, it's about using them in real-world scenarios.
Exactly. And these problems, they're based on what they've learned in Key Stage 2.
Okay, give us a taste of what kind of topics they might encounter.
All right, so first up, we've got number and place value.
So understanding the value of each digit in a number.
Like knowing that in the number 345, the 3 represents 300.
Makes sense. What else? What else?
Then there are calculations, but not just straightforward ones.
Word problems, though, no.
Word problems, they have to figure out what operation to use based on the wording.
So it's testing their reading comprehension as well as their math skills.
It's all connected. Then there are questions on fractions, decimals, and percentages.
So solving problems using those concepts.
Exactly. And then we have ratio and proportion, which might involve things like scaling recipes.
So, like, if you need to double a recipe, how much of each ingredient do you need?
Exactly. And there's even some simple algebra thrown in there.
Algebra. That sounds scary.
But it's really basic stuff, like solving equations like 5 plus x equals 10.
Okay, so not too terrifying.
And then we have measurement covering things like length, weight, volume, time, and money.
So, like, how many centimeters are in a meter or how many minutes are in an hour?
You got it. Geometry is also in the mix, knowing about different shapes and their properties.
So, like, how many sides does a triangle have? Or what's the area of a square?
Exactly. And finally, we have statistics, testing their ability to read charts and graphs.
So, like, understanding bar graphs, pie charts, that kind of thing.
Precisely. It's all about making sense of data.
Wow. The reasoning papers really cover a lot of ground.
They do, and they're not just testing calculations, they're testing problem solving and logical thinking.
It's about applying those math skills to different situations.
Exactly. And remember, the questions are often presented as word problems.
Just got to read carefully and figure out what they're actually asking.
And they might be in different formats. Some are multiple choice. Others require them to show they're working.
So a good mix of question types.
Keeps them on their toes.
All right, we've talked about the tests themselves, what they cover, how they're structured.
We've got the lay of the land.
Now let's talk about the big question. How to prepare for these SATs. Any tips for parents and kids out there?
Absolutely. Having a study plan is key. Organization is everything.
So it's not just about cramming the night before.
No, no, it's about starting early, revising regularly, making it a habit.
And having a timetable, right?
Right.
So you make sure you cover everything.
Exactly. Breaking it down into manageable chunks
Makes it less overwhelming.
and finding a quiet place to study, free from distractions.
Yeah, turn off those phones. No TV in the background.
Focus is key. And one of the best things you can do is use past papers and practice questions.
Ah, so you get familiar with the format, the types of questions they ask?
Exactly. Practice makes perfect, or at least it makes things a lot less scary.
And it's also a good idea to spend extra time on areas where a child feels less confident.
Absolutely. Identify those weak spots and focus on strengthening them.
And never hesitate to ask for help, right? Teachers, parents, tutors, whoever.
Asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
So true. It's about working together to build that understanding.
Exactly. And remember, preparation isn't about rote memorization, it's about building a solid foundation
So understanding the concepts, not just memorizing facts.
and engaging with the material in different ways.
Making it fun, making it relevant.
Exactly. Now, are there any specific things kids can do to get ready for the English reading and maths tests?
Yeah, any tips tailored to those specific subjects?
Absolutely. For English reading, encourage them to read, read, read.
Anything and everything.
Books, articles, poems, expose them to different writing styles.
And that helps build vocabulary too.
Huge vocabulary boost. And for maths, times tables. Gotta know those times tables.
Practice them till they're second nature.
Because they're used in so many calculations, it's essential.
And playing mental math games, that can be fun too.
Absolutely. Keeps things engaging and helps with speed and accuracy.
There are also tons of great online resources and apps.
Technology can be a lifesaver when it comes to studying.
Okay, so preparation is key. Got
Sure.
it. Now, what about the actual test day? Any advice for kids on how to approach those tests?
All right, so test day, big day. First things first, a good night's sleep is crucial.
No staying up late cramming.
And a healthy breakfast. Fuel that brain.
Absolutely. And arrive at school on time. No need for added stress.
Right, get settled in, take a few deep breaths.
And when the test starts, listen carefully to all the instructions the teacher gives
Pay attention to those details.
and read each question carefully before answering. Make sure you understand what it's asking.
Don't rush into it.
And if you get stuck on a question, don't spend forever on it.
Move on and come back later if you have time.
Time management is key.
And always try to answer every question, even if you're not sure. No penalty for wrong answers. Might as well give it a shot.
Exactly. And if you finish early, use that time to check your answers.
Look for any silly mistakes.
Double check those calculations, make sure you didn't miss anything.
And most importantly, stay calm. Remember all that preparation you've done.
You've got this. Now, it's natural for kids to feel a bit anxious about these tests.
Totally normal. It's a big deal.
So any tips on how to manage that worry? How to stay calm leading up to the tests?
Okay, so first and foremost, remind them that these tests are just one way to see how we're doing.
It's not the be-all and end-all.
Exactly. They don't define who they are.
And talking about their worries can be super helpful.
Get those feelings out in the open.
And make sure they're getting enough sleep, eating healthy meals,
Taking care of their physical well-being is crucial.
and encourage them to keep doing things they enjoy.
Balance is key. Gotta have some fun.
Absolutely. And remind them not to compare themselves to their friends.
Everyone learns at their own pace.
Focus on doing your personal best. That's what matters.
And if they feel anxious during a test, simple things like taking slow, deep breaths can help.
Those calming techniques.
And remind them that their teachers and parents are proud of their effort no matter what the results are.
That support system is so important.
It makes all the difference.
Okay, we've talked about the tests, preparation, managing worries.
Covered a lot of ground.
Let's do a quick FAQ. Answer some common questions people might have about SATs.
Fire away.
Okay, first up, what does SATs actually stand for?
SATs stands for Standard Assessment Tests.
All right, simple enough. When do Year 6 SATs usually happen?
They're usually held in May.
Okay, so springtime tests.
And is there a pass or fail level for SATs?
Is it like you got to get a certain score to pass?
Nope, not at all. SATs aren't about passing or failing. They show how a child is performing against the expected standards for their age.
So it's more about understanding where they are on that learning journey.
Exactly. And what score is generally considered the expected standard?
What's the magic number?
A scaled score of 100 or more usually indicates that a child has met the expected standard.
100. Got it. And what happens if a child gets a score below 100? Does that mean they haven't done well?
No, not at all. A score below 100 just suggests that they might need some extra support in those areas when they get to secondary school.
So it's not a failure, it's just an indicator of where they might need some help.
And what if they score above 100?
What if they knock it out of the park?
That means they're working at a higher level than typically expected for their age.
So they're exceeding expectations. That's fantastic. Now, do SAT's results determine which secondary school a child goes to?
Generally, no.
So it's not like a high score gets you into a better school.
Not usually. Where a child lives is usually the main factor in secondary school placement.
So catchment areas and all that.
Exactly, but sometimes secondary schools might use SAT's results to help with setting up initial classes in English and maths.
So it can play a role, but it's not the deciding factor.
And when do parents and students usually find out the SAT's results?
When do they get that envelope in the mail?
The results are usually shared towards the end of the summer term, often in July.
It's a bit of a wait.
And can parents appeal their child's SAT's results if they have concerns?
What if they think something's not quite right?
Yes, if the school believes there might have been a mistake in the marking, parents can talk to the school about it.
So there's a process in place if needed.
Now, a quick question about the maths tests. Are calculators allowed?
Can kids bring their trusty calculators in there?
Nope. Calculators are not allowed for any of the maths SAT's papers.
Well, got to rely on those brain power calculations.
Mental math skills to the rescue.
And finally, how long does each of the SAT's tests last?
Okay, so the English grammar, punctuation, and spelling paper 1 is 45 minutes.
Okay, so almost an hour for that one.
The English spelling paper 2 is about 15 to 20 minutes.
A shorter burst for spelling.